So, the verse of the day today is everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. Romans 10:13. So, we're going to continue with acute hemolytic transfusion reaction from our last video. This is a type 2 hypersensitivity reaction, typically causes intravascular hemolysis. Which is hemolysis inside the blood vessels. And they're saying that ABO blood group incompatibility can cause intravascular hemolysis. The timing So, ABO blood group incompatibility can cause intravascular hemolysis. ABO blood group incompatibility is due to wrong blood being given during a transfusion. And the symptoms of acute hemolytic transfusion reaction is fever, hypotension, tachypnea, tachycardia, and flank pain, hemoglobinuria, and jaundice. So if you have the same kind of antigen with the same type of antibody in the same place, you will get hemolysis. For example, look at this. Here it says donor RBC with A and B group antigens. So here you have A and B antigen on the red blood cell membrane. And here it says host, anti-A, anti-B, IgG, and IgM. So they're saying the recipient of the blood transfusion has A antibody or B antibody in the plasma. So the donor blood type here is AB, and the recipient blood type is O. So if we have somebody with type AB blood and somebody with type O blood, that will cause a catastrophe. That's what causes the hemolysis and acute hemolytic transfusion reaction. So remember how we said there's A and B antigen on the red blood cells on the red blood cell membrane here? A and B antigen. So what that means is this person's blood type is AB. So there's a chart. I'll show you. If somebody has blood type AB, that means that the antigens on their red blood cell is A and B antigen. And the antibodies in somebody with blood type AB would be none. They would have no antibodies. Once I show you the chart, it will make more sense. Okay, so remember, somebody with type AB has A and B antigen on their red blood cell membrane, and they have no antibodies. And here, this patient right here, the host. So we're talking about donor RBC with A and B group antigens mixing with host anti-A, anti-B antibodies. and how that will cause a transfusion reaction. And I was going to show you the chart. So we have donor blood with type AB, which is this, and they have A and B antigen, and they have no antibodies. This type O blood here, they have no antigens on their RBC, but they have A and B antibodies. This and this cannot mix together. AB and O cannot mix together because um, the same kind of antigen mixing with the same type of antibody in the same place will cause hemolysis. So this same kind of antigen, right? So A and B antigen. If you have the same kind of antigen mixing with the same type of antibody in the same place, you will have hemolysis. So type AB blood has A and B antigen, and type O blood has A and B antibody. So of course, the same antigens cannot mix with the same antibodies. Um, that is what will give you the hemolysis. Okay, and specifically ABO hemolysis, that is known as acute hemolytic transfusion reaction. And the other thing you have to know is that here IgM antibodies involved. So in acute hemolytic transfusion reaction, IgM antibodies involved. The recipient IgM antibody attack donor RBC. This activates complement, which causes intravascular hemolysis. Okay, so the reason somebody would have flank pain in an acute hemolytic transfusion reaction is because of deposition of hemoglobin in the kidney, and which would be due to intravascular hemolysis. So going back to this chart over here, um, A has type blood okay, blood group A has A antigen and B antibody. Blood group B has B antigen and type A antibody. Blood type AB has A and B antigen and no antibody. Blood type O has no A or B antigen and has A and B antibody. So if someone has anti-A antibodies, their blood type is what? Type B. And what antigen will they have? B antigen. If someone has anti-B antibodies, what blood type are they? Their blood type will be A, and the patient will have A antigen. Okay, we're done that. Next. We have febrile non-hemolytic transfusion reaction. Here, cytokines created by donor WBCs accumulate during storage of blood products. Reactions prevented by leukoreduction of blood products. The time frame is within 1 to 6 hours due to preformed cytokines. Clinical presentation is a fever, headaches, chills, flushing. This is more common in children. What happens here is the donor white blood cell releases preformed cytokines. So these are cytokines. IL-1, IL-6, TNF-alpha to this interferon gamma, IL-2, IL-4, interleukins, okay? So, here in febrile non-hemolytic transfusion reaction, what happens is the donor white blood cells accumulate in the blood bank. The white blood cells produce increased cytokines, and this causes fever, chills, and flushing. So you see that WBC right here is from the donor who is donating the blood, and they release preformed cytokines due to being stored up in the blood bank. And this release of cytokines produces the fever, chills, and flushing. Next, we have transfusion-related acute lung injury. It's a two-hit mechanism. Neutrophils are sequestered and primed in pulmonary vasculature. Okay, it's a two-hit mechanism. Neutrophils are sequestered and primed in pulmonary vasculature due to recipient risk factors. Neutrophils are activated by a product known as anti-leukocyte antibodies in the transfused blood and release inflammatory mediators, which cause increased capillary permeability, and this leads to pulmonary edema. The time for this to happen is within minutes to 6 hours. Symptoms include respiratory distress, non-cardiogenic pulmonary edema. So what that means is neutrophils will go and accumulate in special areas of the lungs. The neutrophils are from the host, which is the recipient, and then in this host, neutrophils will go and accumulate in special areas of the host's lungs. Neutrophils are activated by antibodies in the donor's blood, and the recipient will get edema in the lungs. So neutrophils are sequestered and primed in pulmonary vasculature. So neutrophils are gathered in one spot in the host. And this is due to anti-leukocyte antibodies from the donor's blood. So the donor's blood has something known as anti-leukocyte antibodies, which are antibodies against neutrophils. And then these anti-leukocyte antibodies make the neutrophils in the host go and accumulate in certain parts of the lungs. And the neutrophils become activated and release inflammatory mediators, and this will cause increased capillary permeability and pulmonary edema in the host. You see these darker spots? This is where the neutrophils are, and that's like the neutrophils are accumulated there, and this will eventually cause pulmonary edema in the host. The donor has anti-leukocyte antibodies. This and this antibody will go and activate neutrophils, causing pulmonary edema in the host. Okay? Alright. Next, we have delayed hemolytic transfusion reaction. This is anamnestic response to a foreign antigen on donor red blood cells, most commonly Rh or other minor blood group antigens previously encountered by recipient, typically causes extravascular hemolysis. Onset for delayed hemolytic transfusion reaction is over 24 hours. Usually presents within 1 to 2 weeks due to slow destruction by reticuloendothelial system. Generally self-limited and clinically silent. You have mild fever and hyperbilirubinemia. So what that means is the donor has Rh antigen on the RBC and the recipient has no Rh antigen on their RBC. So the recipient produces Rh antibody, also known as IgG antibodies, upon re-exposure to the transfused blood. This causes Rh antibody from the recipient to kill Rh antigen on the host by hemolysis in the spleen. I'll say it again. So the donor has Rh positive. I learned it as Rh positive and Rh negative. Actually, there is just Rh antigen, and there is no Rh negative antigen. So I learned it like this, so it's easier. It was easier for me, so I'll just say it. Donor has Rh positive antigen on their RBC. Recipient has no Rh antigen on their RBC. So the recipient produces Rh antibody, also known as IgG antibodies, upon re-exposure to the Rh positive antigen. This causes Rh antibody that's that's being made right after the exposure from the recipient to kill off the Rh positive antigen on the host RBC by hemolysis in the spleen. And Rh negative antigen is not a thing, it's only Rh positive antigen, which means you just have a Rh antigen on the RBC. Rh antigen means that there is a Rh antigen on the RBC, and Rh negative means there is no Rh antigen on the RBC. And the major antibody involved in delayed hemolytic transfusion reaction is IgG. Don't forget that, it's very important. So you have to remember an AB mismatched, which was acute hemolytic transfusion reaction. The main antibody was IgM. And then in Rh mismatched, the main antibody is IgG. And that is talking about delayed hemolytic transfusion. Okay. Next, autoantibodies.